You may please go outside. Okay, we are now going to speak about seismic shifts in capital markets with the token model. And here is a presentation I made in St. Moritz in Switzerland this January. So I'm going to speak about how the crypto economy has been institutionalized and how every big financial institution is playing actively in this new crypto industry with trillions of dollars of opportunity. So I am the founder and CEO of Himalaya Capital Exchange. This is an ambitious next generation future stock exchange where companies will go public and do their IPO and list their shares on a digital stock exchange, and shares will be issued as well as traded in a token form. So just like when there was a transformation from paper shares to demat shares about a decade ago, and that made the stock markets very accessible to the ordinary investor, we now have another paradigm shift in the capital markets where ordinary investors like you and me can also have an opportunity to create wealth. Now, in the world, if you see how to get rich, there are only two ways to get ultra rich. I'm not talking about rich as in, well-to-do. I'm talking about becoming billionaires and so on. There are only two ways to create wealth. One is the Steve Jobs way, where you are an inventor and you disrupt several industries and you create billions of dollars in value. And the second is the Warren Buffett way, where you pick stocks, you pick the right companies and the right horses to bet on, and you patiently hold that stock, and as the company progresses and builds value, you create wealth as a stockholder and a controlling owner of that company. So these are the only two ways, and rest of the ways actually don't lead to true serious wealth. These are the only two ways to create serious wealth. Now, there are not many opportunities for every entrepreneur to disrupt industries. There are so many, as it is, entrepreneurship is extremely hard to do and hard to pull off. And then there are so many challenges for an entrepreneur to deal with. So for you to become an extremely successful, legendary entrepreneur, you first have to pick a bet. You first have to study which are the inflection points in the technological evolution, and which are the industries that promise you the most opportunity, and you have to build very unique expertise and niche knowledge in that particular industry which none of your competitors have, and you have to build USP, unique strategic positioning in that particular space. So for all these things to come together, you have to really be a genius like Steve Jobs. Otherwise, you can do wealth creation by being a Warren Buffett, and for this you have to have accessibility to good quality stocks and great opportunities. We all know which are the good companies. We hear of Facebook, we hear of Google, now we hear of Flipkart, we hear of Swiggy. So when companies become successful, we hear of them and they become famous companies, and we know these are good companies to own stocks. But do we have access to that, to those stocks? Not really, because you have to fill up a tedious share application. In fact, there are legendary stories of ordinary people, ordinary middlemen who were able to marry off their daughters for the first time because they held shares in Reliance stock. So Reliance AGMs, the annual general meetings, we used to hear tales of these middlemen, Gujarati middlemen, or ordinary salaried employees talking about how they were able to invest in a few shares of Reliance, and those few shares made them wealthy enough that they could marry their daughters off. So this kind of opportunity presents itself only when you are able to identify, spot these high quality blue chip companies and invest very early on. So the point I'm making is the ordinary investors normally do not have such opportunities, and we are taking a step towards democratizing wealth creation and creating opportunities for ordinary people like you and me to be able to participate in the stock markets and create wealth. And why do we need this? Because not everybody is a great entrepreneur. We have to be able to invest in that entrepreneur. As the entrepreneur succeeds, as he creates $1 billion value, then we also become wealthy because we are shareholders in that opportunity. So this is Himalaya Stock Exchange, Capital Exchange. This is my company, where we want to do a global, borderless, frictionless stock exchange based on smart contracts. I earlier described to you before lunch what smart contracts are, and this is indeed a phenomenal revolution. And smart contracts enable you to do many things like voting and dividend distribution, corporate governance, and many such things which are unable to do with the ordinary paper shares. So even scams like the ICICI Bank scam we had, Chanda Kochar was inculpated in one of the scams. So these kind of corporate governance issues can also be avoided with the e-voting and the governance process that becomes much superior thanks to smart contracts. So Himalaya Capital Exchange aims to disrupt this industry of stock markets, capital markets, and the entire fundraising mechanism for entrepreneurs. And this is for small and medium enterprises. This is for ordinary entrepreneurs around the world. Entrepreneurs from anywhere can access capital from any investor in the world, and vice versa, investors anywhere in the world can spot opportunities and invest in entrepreneurs in any corner. For example, in South Korea, in Philippines, in Hong Kong, and so on. You are not restricted only to the entrepreneurs that are in your own geography. Okay, what is security tokens? So, in 2017, we witnessed a very peculiar phenomena of ICOs. So, not many of you would have heard of ICOs. ICO stands for Initial Coin Offering. This was a phenomena that was witnessed for the first time, and $5.6 billion were raised just in 1 year alone, 2017. And this was the year we brought the inventor and founder of Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin, to India. And we hosted a few conferences, and I represent Ethereum in India, and we evangelized smart contracts and blockchain technology in India. So in 2017, there were at least 1,000 ICOs where first-time entrepreneurs were able to raise $10 million, $20 million, sometimes even $50 million, and without having to go to venture capital firms or the traditional investors or banks. So people like you and me subscribed to these ICOs. Most of them turned out to be scams, but some genuine entrepreneurs were able to raise money that they were not able to raise for several decades. So this was a phenomenal revolution. So if crowdfunding was an inflection point in the capital markets, ICOs were a bigger inflection point, and this is a landmark moment in the history of capital markets. So what is security tokens? Security tokens is nothing but tokens which are represented in a digital format, which represent real company shares or real instruments which offer something tangible. For example, one of my guests here owns a plantation somewhere in Andhra Pradesh. So 10 years down the line, if there is a teakwood plantation and the plantation fetches good yields, today if you want to raise money for that plantation, you can go and approach 1,000 investors and say, hey, if you invest $100 today or 10,000 rupees or 1 lakh rupees, then each such share will represent, let's say, one teakwood tree, and whatever profits that teakwood tree fetches, this share's dividend can be distributed to you. So similarly, you can have real estate, for example, a house somewhere in Bangalore, or any other company with so-and-so research and development and so on. So you can have any number of industries and companies doing this security token, where a company promises something tangible to the investor. Now, how is this different from initial coin offerings? Initial coin offerings do not represent something tangible, and these are not treated as securities. So entrepreneurs have gone to great lengths to see to it that they are not considered securities by the regulators, and which is why regulators around the world, London, New York, China, South Korea, Philippines, everywhere, they came down very